The audience mocked when she entered. It began as a low tide of murmurs, a shifting of bodies in the plush, semicircular seating of the Grand Zenodrome. The being that stepped onto the vast, empty stage was small, a pale outline against the holographic star-field backdrop. Her species, human, was known here only as a recent and somewhat awkward addition to the galactic concord. They were engineers, stubborn terraformers, noted for their irrational emotional outputs and physical fragility. The arts of the concord were symphonies of precise light, harmonies of subatomic resonance, architectures of solidified thought. Humanity's offerings had been quaint, literal, sentimental. And now one of them stood alone, under the blistering scrutiny of 1,000 civilizations. She carried no instrument, no projector orb, no neural interface crown. She wore a simple, dark garment. Her name was irrelevant to the crowd. She was simply the human. A titter rippled from the VRAC contingent, their chitinous plates clicking with amusement. A melodic, dismissive chime echoed from the floating crystalline entities of Lyria. This was the premier cultural showcase, and humanity had sent this. Solitary, soft thing. The derision was not malicious, but it was absolute, a collective, silent verdict of absurdity. She stood for a moment, head bowed, as if gathering the scattered scorn from the air. Then she looked up. Her face, with its limited expressivity by Concord standards, was calm. She raised her hands, empty palms facing the audience. Her voice, when it came, was unamplified yet clear, translated seamlessly by the arena systems into concept and meaning. "We are new here," she said. The statement was simple, disarming some of the noise through its sheer obviousness. "We have heard your magnificent works. We have learned your histories, which stretch back like great mountains. Ours is a short story, written not in stone, but in—" She paused. Her hands moved, not in grand gesture, but with a curious delicacy, as if tracing the edges of something invisible, in whispers. She closed her eyes, and she began. It was not a song, not in any recognized form. From her lips came a sound, a single pure note. It held, then another, weaving around it, a harmony created by one voice. It was a technique ancient to her people, called throat singing, where a single singer became a chord. The notes were low, resonant, vibrating in the chests of the audience. Unfamiliar and profound. The holographic star field behind her reacted. It was not a programmed response. The arena's sensitive systems, designed to translate artistic energy, were picking up her biometrics, her neural patterns, the minute vibrations in her larynx. The stars began to pulse in time with her dual tones. Then she changed. The harmonic drone continued, an unwavering bedrock, but over it she began to weave a melody. It was a wordless, soaring line, full of rises and falls that seemed to speak of vast distances and longing. Her hands continued their gentle sculpting of the air. The star field morphed. It was no longer a generic backdrop. A blue-green planet, stunning in its familiarity to her, yet alien to most watching, coalesced before them. They saw white clouds swirl over vast oceans. They saw the amber glow of a single sun setting over a continental edge. The image was not static. It lived and breathed with her voice. They saw the dance of auroras over polar ice, the furious swirl of a hurricane, the gentle fall of rain on a forest canopy. Each natural wonder was tied to a shift in her melody, a new layer of harmony. The audience's mockery had died into a stunned silence. This was not crude. This was specific. This was a translation of a world. Her eyes opened, and they seemed to look through the hologram into a deeper past. The melody grew somber. The harmonic drone beneath it gained a gritty, textured quality. The planet's image flickered. They saw flashes now, simple dwellings of stone and wood, the flicker of communal fire, figures gathering against the dark. The music became rhythmic, the pounding of feet on earth, a clap of hands, the call and response of a people finding each other. It was the sound of tribe, of survival, of stories told not for glory, but for warmth. A large, quadrupedal being from a heavy gravity world felt an inexplicable tightening in its massive chest. The concept of hearth was not exclusive to humanity. She moved into another movement. The rhythm fractured, became complex, frantic. The imagery turned to soaring towers of steel and light, cities that climbed like crystalline mountains, spacecraft piercing the atmosphere. The melody was one of frantic triumph, a soaring technological scream. But the harmonic foundation grew discordant, strained. The visuals showed beauty, but also smog, scars on the land, the frantic, lonely faces of crowds. The music was a civilization racing towards a cliff, proud and terrified. The crystalline Lyrians, whose own history involved a careful, millennial-long consensus toward progress, shuddered in resonance. They understood this tension. Then, a crash. In her music, it was a sudden cessation of the high melody, leaving only the ragged, weary drone. The holographic cities faded. In their place was a vista of silent ruins, reclaimed by green. A single broken archway stood against a twilight sky. The silence she created was more powerful than sound. Her voice returned, not with a melody, but with a whisper that filled the arena. It was the whisper of wind through dead cities, the whisper of roots cracking stone, the whisper of a species remembering it was also part of the dirt dot, and then a new note. Soft, tentative, a single, pure tone of hope rising from the ruins. It was joined by another and another, building not into a triumphant fanfare, but into a quiet, determined chorus. The hologram showed a sapling pushing through cracked pavement. A new, cleaner city, built in harmony with the land. A family, features blurred by universal recognition, sharing a meal under a tree. A small ship, not a conqueror's vessel, but an explorer's, leaving orbit, aimed at the stars. Her voice gathered all the threads, the primal drone, the lament of loss, the whisper of renewal, the fragile hope, and wove them back into the initial, longing melody. It was the same tune, but it was different now. It carried the weight of everything she had shown. It was no longer just the story of a world, but the story of a soul that had lived through all of it. She was no longer just a human on a stage. She was every ancestor who had looked at the night sky in fear and wonder. She was every loss and every hard-won victory. She was the regret for broken things and the unwavering will to mend them. She was the child of that blue-green world, standing in a galaxy of elders and saying wordlessly, "This is us. We are small. Our story is short, but it is ours, and we carry it with us." The final image was of the earth, whole and beautiful, not as a trophy, but as a home, floating in the immense, loving black. Her final note, the foundational drone, faded slowly until it was indistinguishable. From the hum of the Xenodrome's own systems, it was over. She lowered her hands. She was just a small being in a dark garment again. Breathing heavily, her face sheened with effort. For a long moment, there was perfect, absolute silence. Then, from the VRAC section, a sound began. It was not a click of amusement, but a deep, rhythmic rattling, a staccato tremor of chitin plates. It was, in their culture, the sound of profound respect, the equivalent of a standing ovation for a master tactician. A Lyrian crystal pulsed, not with dismissive chimes, but with a sustained, soft chord of deep blue and empathic violet, a chromatic expression of shared sorrow and understanding. One by one, then in waves, the entire audience manifested their appreciation. Bioluminescent patterns flared across amphibian skins. Fragrant, calming pheromones were released into the air by delicate floral beings. The air thrummed with low-frequency hums and shimmered with light. Across the Concorde, billions watched on feeds. In docking bays, human engineers, who had been bracing for another embarrassment, stood frozen, tears cutting lines through the grime on their faces. They had just seen their entire history, their shame and their pride, their folly and their hope, reflected back at them with the clarity of art. On stage, the human simply waited, her head once again slightly bowed. She did not smile in triumph. The performance had emptied her. She had shown them everything, the beautiful and the broken, and in doing so, she had made her fragile species for this single, crystalline moment. Utterly universal, an ancient being, its form shrouded in a containment field of gentle energy, directed a thought that was broadcast to all. You called your story short, the Ancient One mused, its mental voice thick with a feeling none could translate, but all could feel. Asterisk, you measured it in years, a mere whisper against our shouts. But you have shown us a whisper can contain the shape of an entire world, and the hope for a billion more. Asterisk, the audience, who had mocked when she entered, now shared a silence that was full. For in her song, they had not just heard humanity. They had remembered their own first steps, their own lost homes, their own long journeys from the dark. And they wept, not for her, but with her, for the beautiful, tragic, hopeful fragility of all things that dare to reach for the stars.